I have been a major fan of Gong since I started my first job in tech over a decade ago. I have always known them as a pioneer in AI and one of the most influential companies in the go-to-market tech space. Since then, they have done an impressive job turning their core call recording intelligence tool into an entire revenue growth platform, powered by a very well-trained AI. Today I have two powerhouse guests from Gong to share the RevOps best practices they've seen across their massive customer base. We have their lead partner engineer, Tucker Sjoblad, who joined Gong over 2.5 years ago to lead partner engineering for Gong's go-to-market partnerships team. Before Gong, he also has an impressive background with Tableau and Salesforce, two of my other favorite tools. We also have Craig Hanson, who is the Senior Director of Market Strategy in Gong's Revenue Center of Excellence. He works closely with RevOps, sales, and other execs at Gong's 400 top customers and go-to-market org worldwide to build and share insights on customer best practices in RevOps, optimizing the revenue tech stack, consolidation, and the latest AI-based innovations, transforming how revenue teams drive impact. Prior to Gong, Craig was a general partner and co-founder of a venture capital firm, investing deeply in AI B2B technology companies. His perspective of the future of AI and the go-to-market tech market led him to join Gong to help build Gong's amazing story. Gentlemen, we have so much to unpack today. I'm so excited and happy to have you both here. Craig, I'm going to pass it to you. Thank you for being here and really excited about what Gong has in store for the future of go-to-market tech.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, it's great to be here with you. We appreciate the chance, and we can share a bit more of the vision for what Gong has in store and really all that it's become as the platform. And Tucker and I are going to really try to unpack out of a lot of the work that we do with those top customers and across the market. What are the best practices, the ideas, the things that we see working for RevOps leaders, the things that we see not working, so we can try to hopefully add some good value there as working with you and the broader RevOps teams. So bringing from that perspective all the work that Tucker and I do with all these top companies through the Center of Excellence. As you mentioned, Anthony, I even got to know that space early on just through the venture capital realm, investing in researching, working with literally hundreds of customers of all these different solutions. So what we've packed here today is some of those key insights and learnings, and then we'll give you a way at the end to be able to connect with us and learn more if you'd like to. So here's what we had in store for today. We're trying to make it conversational and interactive, so we'll all be popping around. But essentially, we're going to start off, we're going to talk about some of the state of the market of RevOps. What are the key things that we're hearing? And then what are those best practices that those leading companies are arcing toward? We'll unpack for you a little bit of the Gong platform, give you a sense for all of that has become. And then Tucker and I are going to walk you through 3 tangible core areas of impact where RevOps leaders and their broader teams are getting genuine revenue impact in productivity, predictability, and growth. There may be some helpful guides and some interesting examples of where AI innovation is coming to play with companies. So with that, we'll kick off into the first section. Good to go? All right, let's jump into it. So the first thing that we're seeing across the market that I think will resonate with a lot of people here is, as RevOps leaders and organizations, we're facing a lot of challenges and a lot of headwinds in this year. The first is that 70% of strategic initiatives, those key can't fail initiatives that we all kick off as companies, 70% of those still fail. It's a pretty bad success rate, according to McKinsey. The second is that 53% of deals actually forecast to commit to close don't end up closing. So a little worse than a coin toss. And the third is that the teams, all of our teams, we're seeing this, are just buried in a lot of unproductive work, right? That's keeping us away from sellers. So 77% of a rep's time is spent on non-selling activities. So huge hit on productivity. So these are some core areas that RevOps leaders are facing challenges in. And in each of these, revenue intelligence systems, revenue tech, and particularly powered by AI, should be able to help solve these, right? And Tucker and I can tell you from working with a lot of these top customers there's a legitimate and massive impact that AI-based revenue systems can have. Yet a lot of leaders still feel like they're struggling to know how to effectively implement and roll out AI-based technology and make it effective for their organization. The first concern we hear is a lot of worry about inaccurate or inconsistent results. A lot of times, maybe they've looked at products, they've started to dig into things, and they're not seeing the accuracy or the efficacy there on the first go. So that's a big concern. Second is genuine concerns about privacy and security, which are legit things to be able to look at and know whether or not their data and all their privacy of their customers' data and their own data is being protected. And third is just the teams being overwhelmed with everything that they've got, right? So on average, it takes sellers, you move to the next click, it takes sellers 10 tools to be able to close a deal, right? That's a lot of swivel chairing by our reps, by the broader team, popping in and out of different applications. So it's a disjointed workflow and experience. We want to be able to solve those, right? So those are things we're all trying to solve as RevOps leaders and teams. Even if we've got the AI, it's got to be accurate, it's got to be effective. We've got to make sure that it's enterprise grade security, and we can't have the AI insights or actionability fragmented in all these different silos of products. So how do we bring those three things together? This is something that we've studied, we work a lot with in these leading companies. And a lot of what we're hearing is this first core point of they're looking for revenue tech systems, particularly those powered by the benefits of AI, to be able to help them solve this. And second, we hear a lot that organizations, and particularly RevOps leaders, they want to be able to consolidate in their overall revenue tech stack. And this has two parts. Part of it is really streamlining, simplifying the revenue tech stack, making it easier for those sellers, as we talked about, so they have to swivel chair less. The other side is really just being able to get more business impact out of all the systems that they're utilizing. So having a more cohesive flow across all these core functions that they need to hit, not having the insights and actions siloed or disjointed across there. So that's a big driver for consolidation. Those are a couple of big pushes that we see. And again, there is this massive, and we can say from experience, legitimate impact that AI-based systems can have on revenue impact for teams. Yet there's this struggle with the realization of knowing how to effectively employ that. What makes the difference? So why is there this paradox, right, between the great potential of all these systems and what companies have been able to realize or they feel like they could effectively implement today? And it really comes down to the simple statement that all AI is not created equal. There's a lot of AI out there. Lots of people are talking about it. Everyone's talking about it these days. But all AI is not created equal. And in particular, AI is only as good as the data and understanding that it's built upon, right? So what does it take to make AI effective for revenue teams? Here are three core pillars that we've studied and built out as the best practices for companies. They're going to serve as a North Star or guide as you're thinking about your own organization. Three things to put in place. The first is you got to start by capturing all the right data, right? It's pretty simple, but it's got to be more than the CRM, which is mostly manual input by reps and others, and we can get people to do it. It's got to be more than activity level data, right? Number of calls, number of emails, that a meeting occurred, right? That quantitative aspect. It's really got to be the qualitative aspect. So customer interactions are key. Second key aspect is then once we have all those interactions, we need to deeply understand what's going on in all those interactions. Full content and context, right? That's the depth of understanding that needs to be able to happen on an automated basis. When we do those two things, we can do the key third step of then being able to autonomously pull out the insights and actions and move those directly right into where our reps are working, where our managers, our leaders are working. You don't have to go back to the source data. You're not digging through, listening to hours of calls, pouring through emails, trying to pull together 20 different dashboards or spreadsheets together to make sense of things. The insights and actions should be right there where people are working, where they can take action on them directly. So hopefully that provides a good North Star for some of the key frameworks. And we'll dive into some examples and real tangible use cases that RevOps leaders that we're working with are employing in their organizations.
Yeah, Craig, it
So
definitely does. It definitely does. And I would say I mean, there's amazing research that's backing this up, but anecdotally, here at Lean Scale, we're on the front lines doing RevOps for VC-backed startups every day. And I think some of the stats you provided, as an example, too many siloed tools, an average of 10 tools to close a deal. I think that's even generous. I've seen some go-to-market tech stacks that are absolutely out of control, and the number of tools is so high. And I think people don't really understand there's a cost for the rep or a customer service or customer success manager to use all the tools and swivel chair, as you put it. But there's also a major cost on enabling the team and managing the back end and managing integrations and making sure that the data is piped correctly to get across all of those tools. It becomes an absolute nightmare to manage if you don't have an incredibly capable team. And then, like you said, if you're not capturing all the right data at the right point in time, you don't understand the data. The part that we've been very focused on with any AI deployments that we've done with our customers is having incredibly effective prompt engineering as well, and making sure that you have the deep understanding of your data so you can prompt it appropriately and then have the base of data that your AI is trained on. So there are so many foundational steps, and that's probably why so many of these AI implementations are failing, because they're starting with the last step of implementing some AI system or expecting it to start autonomously delivering insights without investing in the foundation to power the AI properly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Right. So you hear stuff at the top that can sound similar, like, oh, we can give your managers coaching recommendations, or we can identify deal risks or warnings, or we can give your reps guidance on what to do next. But really, each of those things is only as good as what you were talking about, Anthony, which what is that data and understanding that it's built upon, right? Because that drives whether or not it's actually the right recommendations, or you've identified all the deal risks that occur for this, or you actually know what the blueprint for success in this deal looks like, and therefore what the next best action is for that rep to take. So that data and understanding core is really that key component that makes AI effective.
And the trend of having the consolidation really, really tees that up well, because when you layer in so many point solutions, it's really tough to do that. So it's no secret that a lot of the go-to-market systems are consolidating, and I think it's going to really, really help customers get the most out of their AI initiatives too. So I know some people are mixed on that trend, but I'm actually pretty excited about it because I think it's going to simplify and empower what's even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a sense in this next slide of how we've built that as the Gong platform for those who aren't familiar with everything that it's become. But here's how we're doing those three key things. One, we're capturing all of the communications interactions, right? We're also pulling in the information from the CRM and then being able to write back the richness of everything that's in Gong into the CRM. So your ROI on that goes up significantly. We're also pulling an ecosystem now of it's over 170 third-party applications that have built onto Gong as that main revenue execution platform. So probably a number of those other tools you utilize. So you really can get that cohesive, streamlined view into those signals. And then deeply understanding that in the revenue intelligence platform, right? That's the secret sauce, where we've got by far the largest data set in the market for sales-focused transactions. It's all specifically trained on that. That results in significantly more accurate AI that's actually effective and on target. And we do that not just by using the public models, but by building over 40 plus proprietary AI models that we use. And it's that core foundation, is that secret sauce that powers the full lineup of the revenue intelligence products now, which is full end to end. So it's everything from prospecting, starting with the sales engagement side, through conversation intelligence, up-leveling the team, and then through to deal execution and forecasting. So that full life cycle of the sales and revenue journey, all now within that one cohesive platform. One key aspect there is everything within Gong here is all natively built. These are not stitched together acquisitions. It's one seamless code base, so you can get that cohesiveness. It's a demonstrable difference in the user experience versus something that's been stitched together and integrated.
That's
So with that,
unbelievably. I just want to add that's unbelievably impressive. And I think what you have done at Gong, which I think is a really strong competitive advantage, and correct me if I'm wrong, but getting the core data and building your platform on the actual interactions that are happening between reps, customer service, customer success, and customers and prospects, like that is the core of what all of these go-to-market teams are trying to do. It's understanding what conversations are happening, what is real-time market feedback about your product in context to the market, and building the foundation on that and then connecting everything else, I think is so strong and really, really tough to replicate in the long run from any other company too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That is the really hard part to do. It's where Gong started, right? It was that initial insight that, okay, things are going well from a sales perspective, but then at some point it starts getting harder, right? Or you have a tough quarter, a couple of quarters, and not everybody's hitting plan, or the win rate's going down, or things aren't working. They're not scaling the way you wanted them to be. Where do you go to try to find the answers, right? You can go into first check the CRM, right, which still exists as that system of record. But again, most of what's in there, it's getting reps to manually type in information. So it can be pretty sparse, can be outdated. Ultimately, you're getting people to type in their opinions of what they think happened in something, but it's going to be pretty brief, right? You know, the entry is usually like, met with Anthony, awesome meeting. That's
Yeah.
what you get, right?
Right.
Then you've got activity level data, right? You can tell me, okay, well, are my people sending enough emails? Are they doing enough calls? Did a meeting occur? Okay, that tells me the quantitative aspect. But the key of what we're all trying to do as RevOps leaders is really improve the qualitative aspect, right? It's the productivity. So it's quantity times quality. Are we doing the right steps? Are we saying the right messaging? Are we utilizing our best practices and key steps as a team, as an organization, down to each specific communication? That's the key to really improving. And that golden source exists within the interactions. So that was Gong's original core, different from where other platforms in the space started, but that is the hardest part. But we think the key aspect to actually improving organizations.
I absolutely agree. There's no more important data than that. If you're a VP of sales training a sales team, the first thing you do is listen to calls. How are they interacting with the customer? Or you're doing ride-alongs with one of your new reps to hear and see, feel, touch, smell exactly how that call and interaction is going. And to be able to do this in a manner that's scalable is really incredible. So I think huge leading advantage. And I mean, the amount of data you have on this type of interaction for how long you've been in market is also a really, really strong moat to keep moving forward.
Thanks. And we're going to show you, Tucker and I will walk through some specific and fun examples of just how much you can do now with that AI-based automation. So we're going to dive into 3 specific use cases or areas of impact and give you some specific examples. The first is on productivity, right? How do we drive productivity with our teams? One core area is within deal boards, or where you can pull together all of those key signals, the quantitative and the qualitative aspects, to know really, are the deals on track? Is this pipeline on track? Or where do I need to focus my attention, either as a rep or as a manager diving in to see all of those key signals? And exactly as Anthony was pointing out, it's got to be more than just the stuff we're getting out of activities or CRM. It's how do I unpack and understand at scale the qualitative aspects and have that automatically updated for every deal across my entire pipeline. Second is then being able to get AI-based recommendations on everything that has happened and what I should be doing next, right? What are those key next best actions that the rep can be taking based on knowing what's been successful for you in the past? And then the third is getting the insights across all of these interactions to really be able to up-level the team and have the team be able to up-level themselves. So that first part is really even knowing what the difference is between middle performers and top performers, right? It's probably not that they just send out more emails or they do more calls. It's something about how they do them. It's their effectiveness. It's their following of the best practices. It's how they're employing the training. So now you can have an automated way to deeply understand those rep behaviors, what they're utilizing down to the interaction and see, okay, well, here are coaching opportunities or ways that we can up level, ways that we can move more of our middle performers up into top performers. Let me hand it over to Tucker now, and he'll dive into each of these areas a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. And for everybody watching and listening, I want to call out, by no means is this going to be an exhaustive look through everything Gong. Instead, we want to just highlight a couple of key ways we think we can drive, across all of those three outcome categories for RevOps leaders. And we're excited to, in the future, get together with you and dig in more. But for now, let's think about a couple of these areas, starting off with deal boards, which really act as a single pane of glass to surface critical information for new business, for upsells, renewals, or even cross-functional teammates, like whether you're a solutions engineering leader or maybe manage professional services delivery. All of this is to say that you can get the 10,000-foot view across your pipeline, but also be able to click in and have deep visibility into all of the different activities going on. And from there, the idea is that you're not just left with, hey, here's all the activities that you've been doing, but you'll also have calls to action on how you can unblock deals, follow up, keep up with your sales methodology, and more. The end goal for this from a productivity perspective is certainly to help managers more scale more across their team. You can be in more rooms at once with the recordings and the call spotlights that we're about to show. But it also just keeps reps accountable for how they're progressing through a sales cycle, surfaces key information like what competitors are in the mix, have pricing objections come up, or anything else that's important to that deal and opportunity. And we'll see more about that in a little bit. The next is how Gong can actually make recommendations and keep the ball moving for you. So we have a concept called assists, or our AI recommendation engine that is there to keep you on top of your deals. So, that's right after a call finishes, shooting you that Slack ping to get that follow-up email sent, or even little things like the day after your prospect gets back from out of office, reminding you that it would be a good time to reach out. But I'd say the really exciting piece is what we can do with generative AI, where Gong, again, because of this rich data set that we've built, and I don't think Craig mentioned it, but it's somewhere around 4 billion with a B spoken and written sales interactions that power those 40 plus models and power those 3+ LLMs that we've built and tuned in-house for revenue use cases. That means that when you ask our AI a human question like, what are the next steps, or what might be blocking this deal? And as it looks back through all of the history of those calls and emails and digital interactions with that client, it's going to give you an answer that you can trust. So we'll actually see an example of this in our demo environment in 1 second. But the last thing we want to talk about is how you can scale coaching insights and best practices. So not what we're looking at the screen, but one thing that's really interesting is you might be surprised how many of your reps are prone to get on the soapbox and talk for upwards of 70% of the call. If you're not getting your customers, Anthony, to tell stories and talk about their pain, what's hurting, how do you know what you're actually selling them? Right?
Yeah, I don't, Tucker, on that note, I don't think I'd be too surprised. I think it would be exactly as I expect. So I think any guidance for sellers, typically people who get into the profession have the gift of gab. So any nudging towards more active listening is definitely helpful in the process.
Yeah, and hey, listen, I get away with it because I do a lot of demos, so I'm supposed to talk a lot, right? But what you can do to take it one step further outside of what we've already talked about surfacing things like pricing objections, or when competitors are coming up on deals, you can actually use this view here, which is called deal drivers, to surface warnings and red flag risks across not just one deal, but all of your team's pipeline. So I love this example here because it highlights a couple of things. One, that it looks like each of our reps actually have different needs as far as the type of coaching that Victoria, our manager, should be working with them on. But we also see broad trends across the team that says, hey, we got to make sure that we're okay on price before 2 weeks to the close date. So we can both identify, risk in pipeline at an individual and as a trending level across your team or broader organization, right? So if you've never seen Gong before, welcome. What we're looking at is one individual call here. Could be recorded in Zoom or Google Meet or outbound dial, or it could be an in-person meeting that you record by putting your phone down on the table. But in any case, we got about 40 minutes of content here. And frankly, no one has time to go back and listen, even if we speed it up to 1.5 speed like a podcast, right? So instead, what Gong's AI is doing, again, we keep talking about this data set that we're building. What the output of that for our teams really looks like is this left-hand side here, this call spotlight, where we're doing a couple of things. One, we're saying, hey, give me the one paragraph lowdown, the brief of what happened in this call, or maybe break out these key points, 1 through 10 of all these kind of core areas to the conversation that we got through. And of course, we want to talk about next steps. What are we going to do to keep the ball moving, both from our side and what the prospect promised that they do as well. And, again, where we think about our revenue and sales focus for our AI and our LLMs is that it's not calling out things like Anthony said he had to go to the grocery store to shop for a big dinner party he was hosting. Might sound like something he needs to do, like a next step, but we know that that has nothing to do with sales or revenue use cases, right? So that's why we've trained our AI over the last 8 years to look out for those business outcomes and things that revenue teams really care about, obviously. So how do we take action here? Well, as soon as this call processes in Gong, we're going to get pinged to generate this follow-up email. And look at that, just with one click, because of our tight integration with your email systems, we're actually able to load this full message that our generative AI has put together where we say, hey, here are the key points we discussed on this call. We could read those through. Hey, based on our discussion, here are the next steps, 1, 2, and 3. Let me know if there's anything else I can help out with. We could go ahead and click send right here, shoot it right out of our Outlook or Gmail inbox. And crucially as well, we'll come back to this in a little bit, but we have all of this account context and activity that lives and breathes alongside this email editor experience. So yes, it's easy to follow up on the call spotlight because of all of the detail that we're capturing out of this interaction, but we're also a unified data platform. So those pieces of context when it comes to just a single call, our account views, and our top of funnel activities, as we'll see later today, all that rich data stays with you no matter where you go through the platform. So with that, Craig, I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Great. So we'll dive into the next area of predictability, where we're seeing teams drive revenue impact. And here we'll highlight 3 new key areas. So if you want to click to the next slide. The first is getting a sense for the full insight of all the signals that matter and understanding if a deal and then if the entire pipeline is on track with a view to how that informs and the predictability, right? The forecast that we want to be able to hit. And then second is being able to understand and query across an entire opportunity or account. What are the key things that we need to know about that deal? What are the next steps? What are the recommendations? Maybe where there are risks or issues, or even just helping us summarize and understand information. Being able to ask the system anything, an open face query where you can leverage that full power of all the data and understanding that Gong has. And then third, we'll show you examples of how you can use that to predict with precision with a variety of the analytics and views that you can use to understand your forecast and if it's on track. Tucker, let me kick it back to you to show them more.
Yeah, and Anthony, I mean, are you seeing a lot of Excel-based forecasting right now? Like, what are the trends from your eyes?
Yeah, I think we do see a lot in Excel. We do see a lot in Sheets. I think we have a lot of, when we first engage with a company, they may be new to a lot of this foundation, so they may not even be capturing the right data to be able to predict their revenue. And I think this is I have grown a really strong appreciation for the importance of predictability in revenue because I have seen a lot of companies make really, really bad decisions because they were not able to predict. And I used to think of predictability as a nice to have, as okay, yes, it'd be great if we could predict, but we can still operate and function with a certain level of accuracy. But especially the past couple of years, when I've seen people overhire, overpromise to investors, really make bad calls because they cannot predict the revenue, this could be make or break for a lot of companies. And it's even if you're going to make less revenue, I would take predicting less revenue over more revenue, but I didn't know it was coming. Yeah. Because then I've also seen the other side of that where they don't invest enough and then they give their customers a bad experience. And now all of a sudden they're not delivering against their promises. So I think from a executive perspective, predictable revenue is probably one of the most important things for you to be able to make decisions.
Absolutely. And we've got some great case studies on some of our forecast customers getting up and above 95% forecast accuracy. And we're not talking about just the last week of the quarter, right? That's easier. But Craig, yeah, did you want to jump in here?
I was going to say, and then it's closely tied to that tighter precision or on the forecast where we think we're going to end up, with then the quickly following question of what do I do about it? How do I improve that result, right? Before it's too late to change the outcome. So those two are inextricably tied when you do it well. It gets back to that value of the seamless platform. Okay, now focus on what actions can I take? What do I need to do to be able to help this deal close this month? What are the key next steps that are missing? Where has risk popped up across all of these interactions? It may not be just that somebody hasn't emailed for a couple of weeks, but what are people actually saying or telling us in those interactions? What signals and guidance can we be getting from those, right? Those not only make the forecast more accurate and give you signals that, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's risk that arose in this deal, but also informs, what do you do about it? Okay, here's the guidance for the rep. Here's where the manager can focus. Here's what the leader's expectation can be to actually know how we can improve and move these deals so that they actually do close.
Well said, Craig. So we're going to talk about these kind of three core themes again. Well, the first being, how do we predict deals with precision? Well, I think, again, we're just going to keep coming back to it. Gong's AI and those 4 billion sales interactions that we've collected over the years. And we actually analyze over 300 different signals in a deal that include things just like how long it's been at a certain stage. Are they talking about legal? Are they talking about procurement? Are there cameras on during meetings? I mean, even those little things are important signals that we mine from all of your interactions to provide what we call a likelihood score. So you can see in deals sitting in your commit and most likely in best case, how Gong rates them on a scale of 1 to 100, whether they're a strong commit, weak commit, or somewhere in the middle. And ultimately with forecast, we want to make it easy for teams to roll up their number from the bottom all the way to the top. And I think for our friends in RevOps, we were previously using another forecasting platform, and we're super excited to migrate off of it because of just the ease of administration and flexibility and customization that Forecast offers us as we drink our own champagne here. So we'll talk about deal likelihood and the precision element. We'll spend some time again using some of our generative AI in this feature called Ask Anything that's built into Call Spotlight and Deal Spotlight that helps us prioritize, take action, and surface warning signs across deals. And then the last thing we'll see here as we jump back into our demo environment is our ability to visualize these trends with customizable reports. Again, we've got these 300 plus signals that are powering not just these likelihood scores, but ultimately projections into how our AI thinks your team is going to fall at the end of the quarter. And we have a suite of customizable dashboards built right in that help track and understand how your pipeline is building and changing over time, including the classics like funnel reports and pipeline changes week over week, but we'll click into there as well. So let's go ahead and head over then. Okay, so we're at what's called a forecast board. So just to orient everybody, we're looking at Jessica's team here and her 3 directs as they track towards their number of $3 million for Q2. So what we can go ahead and do is click into one of our reps here, Alex, their commit number of 650K for the quarter. So we could obviously see how this breaks down by month, but instead, I just want to actually look what makes up this number that Alex is talking about. I can click into those deals, and what loads is what's called a deal board, where every row here is an individual opportunity that Gong is, yes, collecting this waterfall view of all of the account information, all of the back and forth, all the digital interactions that we're having with that client. But we're also using that information to surface warnings, like the 3 we see here on this Bitforge deal, which we're actually calling out to be a very low likelihood deal, considering that it's sitting in commit and is going to supposedly come in. Again, that stat that Craig talked about at the beginning of the hour here. But we can click into those deal warnings and see things like, hey, Gong has identified risk in this opportunity, right? We could actually look at that email and say, hey, seems like we're actually going to pause because there are some shifts in priority. So to me, that means we didn't sell our value. We didn't make this an immediate need for our client here, right? But now as a manager, I'm thinking, okay, there's no way that this deal is going to sit in my commit as I roll this up to my VP or my CRO. So the ability for leadership at all levels to actually click into all of these opportunities and not just take the I like Anthony, I think it's going to close kind of biased mentality or opinion-based mentality of forecasting, but instead leverage real data to be able to dig in and understand what's going on in your pipeline. And oh, by the way, of course, we want to make it easy to catch up on things going across an account, because a VP of sales can't know every dirty detail of every single opportunity. So we can just ask and query with human questions to say, hey, what blockers exist in this deal or just across this whole account when it comes to adoption and leveraging our platform or product? So looks like they mentioned a few things that could act as blockers. So change in priorities, it could be the need for clear evidence in ROI. That's a value selling issue to me, right? And how powerful is that for leaders to actually see what composes their commit deals than to actually be able to go in and ask all of these human questions? And of course, we pick on the bad examples, right? But Gong is also here to celebrate when we're multi-threaded. We're talking about value, we're talking about legal and procurement and all of the right things that we'll highlight in this likelihood score to make sure that this deal successfully gets across the line. And one last thing I'll show off here.
Sorry, Tucker, if you don't mind.
Please go for it.
You go back. I really love the qualification visual. So just quickly, I see the medic section over there. I love being able to quickly see, like, okay, Aventine, we're missing that part of the qualification. Bitforge, we're missing those 3 parts of the qualification. And I'm assuming this is being automatically populated based on the conversations that are happening and based on the emails going back and forth.
Yeah, so you're pretty much right. And this is a new feature that we're rolling out called AI Playbook. And Medic is one of them that we're going to have available out of the box. But don't just think Medic, think your sales playbook, and aligning each of these letters or elements of that methodology to those concept understanding smart trackers that Gong, that really only Gong has access to, that deep understanding that Craig mentioned. So as you sort of guessed here, what's amazing is that, like, yes, we're coming in and we're writing about who our economic buyer is, what key metrics are there. We're marking those as completed or in progress. But for areas where we haven't yet filled out our sales methodology, we're actually also able to go in and leverage Gong's AI to say, hey, I know what decision criteria sounds like. Let me show you the examples I found of where our customers are talking about that. And again, we can always click into the evidence. Oops. Don't just take the AI's word for it, right? We can go to those moments, these calls, where they actually mention the need for the scalable solution as compared to their current systems. So super exciting, and we'll come back to this and talk about it a bit more. But a great call out there. 10,000-foot view, where are gaps in our execution, hoping to increase compliance and win more deals, right?
Super impressive.
Great. Did you want to jump in on this at all?
Yeah, I think the key point is what Tucker mentioned, that really you can only get to that level of automation and efficiency by having the deep understanding that Gong is built upon. And that really only Gong is built upon, right? You couldn't automatically populate or understand those kind of fields based on understanding activities or based on understanding keywords, right? You have to understand full content and context. That's incredibly hard to be able to do that and do that accurately. But once you do that, being able to automatically populate and inform fields like that, key steps, knowing what's missing or what's next to do, is a huge productivity driver. It's been a game changer for us and then for a number of our top companies.
And it's that same deep understanding that brings us to, I think, a lot of the value of these reports and dashboards. First, I also want to mention that, as you saw on that platform slide, we work with Snowflake as well as some of the other biggest data warehouses on the market to actually directly pipe Gong data into tables that you can integrate with your own BI and reporting. And so as a Tableau alumni, I love that. I think the more flexible reporting you can have, the better. But what we strive to offer here is answering those top questions and concerns for RevOps and sales leaders right out of the box with configurable and customizable reports, just to make it easy to get answers to those questions you already have. Like, what's my coverage at? What is my team coming in at? What am I coming in at as the manager? But also you can see that we provide this AI enriched projection, and forgive our demo data for being a little bit off on the numbers here, but again, as we can see, we're weighting all of our different opportunities by those likelihood scores and those 300 different signals that we're seeing for deals sitting in commit versus best case versus most likely. And we could click into the math to see how we actually understand how all of these scores lead into the projected deal amounts and this number that we're going to ultimately land at. And we'll share some white papers with you afterwards on some of the studies we've done with customers, but it blows rep forecasting and other forecasting prediction tools right out of the water. So we're super excited to bring this to market for our customers.
Well, I love how you give a peek under the hood too and show the math, show how we came up with this. I think that's really unique. A lot of platforms will not open up the secret sauce of how they're coming up with those projection numbers.
Interesting. All right, so I think that's it for predictability. So Craig, let's bring it home with growth here.
Perfect. Yeah, let's kick into these last three examples where we're seeing teams get revenue impact in growth areas. So three core things that we're going to mention here. First is AI playbooks, as we talked about. So Tucker just gave you a sense for those. Second is then being able to do the sales engagement piece, the prospecting piece, much more effectively, right? By being able to use that deep understanding and all that data to do it more intelligently, more personalized, being able to automate and streamline those tasks. And then a core part of that is being able to help our teams communicate more effectively and efficiently with AI-driven email composers, right? That shave tons of time off, but also allow our teams to employ the best practices. So I'll kick it back to Tucker and we'll show you a little bit more about what those look like.
Yeah, great. We can move through this one pretty quickly, but again, just that high level slide for what we're trying to do with the AI playbook is one, allow leaders to spot gaps, two, increase compliance because we make it easy for reps to fill in those fields based on those AI suggestions that we're finding with that deep understanding of each of those concepts in those customer interactions. And, we ultimately want to help you prove that when you adopt a consistent sales process, your win rates are going to go up. So, we can help show you the math behind that winning behavior and ultimately scale it out to your team and help you measure that adoption. So just a bit on the playbook there. But let's turn over to Gong Engage, which is our top of funnel engagement platform. So the idea here is like other tools on the market, which admittedly was a crowded space when we decided to go off and build our own sales engagement platform. But we wanted to do that because after interviewing some of our customers and looking at ourselves as a former user of a competitor, we saw that there were problems that existed in the space of sales engagement around, first of all, just building quality outreach materials. I mean, I've gotten pings that say, "Hey, you're doing great work at Nike. Like, we're excited to hear about it. Can I schedule 15 minutes?" And I've never worked at Nike, right? I live in Seattle, which I guess is close to Portland, so maybe that's where the wires crossed. But we want to make sure that this is actually quality engagement material, because we're seeing lower than ever open rates and reply rates for cold emails. So how do we make this highly personalized and relevant? And then also, how do we let AI be helpful to SDRs and hunter gatherers, those full cycle AEs, as they go through their prospecting tasks? So we'll see that in action a little bit. And again, the focusing on creating these high converting emails, we want to bring more account context to that authoring experience. So it's not just a contact that you're reaching out to. Instead, you're reaching out to an account that has potentially a rich history, where you're multi-threaded, or have tried to get to this kind of core contact in the past. And then again, leverage Gong's ability to keep the ball rolling with our AI assists and personalization. So that's where we're going to jump in and see in a second. But Anthony, I'll give the mic to you for a second. Any kind of big trends you're seeing that sort of match up with what Craig and I are talking about here?
I think you're right on trend. I think the big thing is getting this capability within the same platform that's going to keep the sales process moving. So there are a lot of generative AI outreach tools on the market, but as soon as you use that one, then you'd have to switch to another tool and then switch to another tool. So I think what's really elegant is being able to go end to end, full top, mid, bottom funnel, and keep the whole sales process moving along the whole way. So I think that's a huge advantage of using it within Gong.
I love that. And then, by the way, if you're ever looking to get back into sales, I know some managers at Gong who are hiring. I think you're doing a great job singing our praises here.
I will let you know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a key aspect to, you mentioned, Anthony, right? Part of that whole consolidation drive, because to really do that initial outreach, the initial prospecting most effectively, it helps to be able to leverage the understanding across the entire sales cycle to know what is effective, what works, what are the best ways that people prefer to interact. So that allows us to do the prospecting side up front more effectively, but also having that be part of the same seamless platform, how we're doing the prospecting, helps the handoff and the sales cycle itself be more effective. Because now we have more understanding about this account, about this person, how they interact, what they care about, all those key things. So really just emphasizing the point you brought up earlier on the value of having that all in one platform.
And one thing, and let me know if I'm thinking about this the right way, but being able to leverage the context and content of what successful messaging looks like in your won deals, and then being able to take that context and incorporate that into your outreach. I think sometimes there's a gap between what we think the market wants to hear and then taking, hey, what's actually working to close a deal? Like, what are these value props that actually are associated with something moving towards something being closed won? And how can we take that, distill it, crystallize it, and convert that into our top of funnel outreach? You have a pretty unique position to be able to bring that full circle.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right. It goes way beyond just A/B testing a particular email sequence, right? Or cadence, right? And know that, well, this one got a higher response rate than this one, so it must be better. Right. That only gives you kind of cursory understanding. It's really, okay, well, what about it is effective? How do we drive the effectiveness and do that in a personalized, intelligent way? So that requires that deeper understanding.
Right.
And I think this is all well said. And there are analogies from what we're doing at the top of funnel, from converting those first couple cold outreaches and cold calls that you're doing, all the way to how are we progressing through those early sales stages. What's actually working in those early sales stages might not have been the hypothesis that we had when we went and trained the sales team and go to market, and our best reps actually figured out what was resonating. And that handoff, like Craig was talking about, from SDR to an account team, is very similar from the AE to our CSM or to our delivery. It's all of that account context there. And really, that's what we want to build and show off here with Gong Engage, where if you walk up and down the halls of any Gong Engage customer, our San Francisco office, you see our SDR team hard at work on this screen right here, which is their to-do list for the day. So we have flows, which are like sequences, right, of kind of planned outreach that we want to hit based on persona or vertical or industry. And so what I'm left with is this list of things to do. And Gong is also helping me figure out where I want to start, because we can see that this lightning bolt icon, that means that they're engaged. We call those digital interactions. And whether it's they're clicking back through an email, opening links, forwarding the message, or working with one of our data partners like G2 to look for that account level intelligence of whether they're viewing our comparisons or going to our website. Whatever it is, we can tell that this prospect is hot, so we should reach out. So I open my email authoring experience, and again, deeply integrated with your Outlook and Gmail, so we can click send right here without needing to change gears or to do the swivel chair. So we have our sales template that we have loaded up. It's easy also to maybe personalize this, rephrase it, again, make it more simplified, festive, if maybe it's the holiday season. But we can also look for inspiration from what our teammates are doing in similar stages for similar flows that we know are getting high response rates. But in any case, we want to make sure that we don't make the Nike mistake, like what happened to me. So we want to bring all of this context about who this contact is, who this lead is, as well as what's going on more broadly in that account, right to the fingertips of anybody authoring. So, of course, we got to show off our generative AI ability to ask any questions like, hey, what might Kellen care about? Tell me about their role and what's important to them. We can see all of the different activities that they've had recently, and we can also compare this to the other active contacts and all of the activity that's going on this account. So we know that, hey, if we're talking to Carissa, somebody else that they might work closely with, that's an important thing to message as you to include as you message somebody for the first time. So all of this, again, is to bring that account focused away from just the individual contact, as well as making it easy to keep it highly personalized and relevant. So again, we think about those lagging indicators of boosting open rates, reply rates, and converting more MQLs to SQLs. Hopefully we've demonstrated a bit about how Gong Engage sort of changes the game in that regard. So that's it on the content from our side. Anthony, any closing thoughts you'd like to wrap this up with?
I think I'm just more and more impressed. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I've been really close to Gong and following the Gong journey. And I think you started with such an important aspect of getting the conversational and a written communication that's going back and forth between your company and prospects and customers. And you've built such an amazing base of data that I think you're really unlocking the potential with. And like I mentioned earlier, the move to consolidation, I think you can just get more out of connecting all this data in one platform. So it's hitting all of the technical trends, but also the market trends, and hitting the pain points that a lot of the customers we work with are experiencing. They're having a very tough time with a number of point solutions. They're having a tough time getting all the data in one place. And they're having a very hard time enabling their teams on all of the technology that needs to be used to move the sales process along. So I think the direction Gong is going is very impressive. And I also know there's so much more to do. This is just the beginning. So Gen AI is still very, very new. And I feel like it became ubiquitous overnight, but it's still so young and nascent. And the future of what you guys are building, I'm just very optimistic about. So I'm very grateful you all were able to take some time and spend it with us today. And I also hope we get to do this again for whatever you're launching in the future.
Great. Yeah, we love spending the time with you and diving into this. It's fun to be able to share some of these core innovations, including a lot of this recent stuff. And there's more interesting stuff coming in that vision. So here's a final call out. If anybody would like to connect with Tucker and I, if you have questions, you want to learn more about Gong or get plugged in, go ahead and find us on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. there's also an ability here below. We'll set up a link where you can click and find a way to connect to a Gong expert to talk to. So hopefully that was helpful today. We appreciate the opportunity to share and always enjoy connecting with the broader RevOps community.
Amazing. Craig, Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and can't wait for the next one.